Hi, how you doing? So I'm Bobby from Websites and DLA, and today I will show you how to install a web server on your PC from a very small application called XAMPP, and it's very easy. So just follow these steps and you'll get everything you need to run your very own first website. So here we go. So let's go to our favorite web browser. So I'm using Google Chrome, and type in the address apachefriends.org and download the latest version for Windows, which is the 7.4.10. And this will download fairly quickly, depending on your internet connection, of course. Once it's completed, we can launch the actual installer. So just click on it and wait for the instructions. Okay, so once it starts, if you have a firewall, it's fairly common that you will get this type of message. Don't worry, XAMPP doesn't come with a virus, so we can just go ahead and continue with installation. And the second one is fairly standard with Windows 8 and 10, is the UAC, or the user account control, which basically says that you cannot install directly in program files because you're missing write permissions. So, or we can deactivate, which we don't want to do. So just click OK. That's okay. We don't want to install it in C program files anyway. So just click OK, and you will get this nice little setup screen. Just click Next. Let everything by default selected. Click Next. And this is actually where we're going to install it. So in our C drive in the XAMPP folder. So click Next here. The language English, perfect. And just make sure that you uncheck this. We don't need to know more about Bitnami or the company that created XAMPP. So we click Next, and finally we're ready for the setup, and we click Next again. So this is going to take a few minutes to install, so I'm going to pause here, and you just continue installing it, and I'll be back as soon as mine is installed. So I'll be back in a few seconds. All right, so we're done installing. And so the setup asks you if you want to start the control panel right away. I will show you a better way to do it. For now, just uncheck this and click Finish. And that's it. So for now, your XAMPP is installed. And I will show you a little trick that I learned to avoid having problems when you try to close it and stuff like that. So we'll go to our C drive, and as you can see, it created a folder called XAMPP, and within here we have the htdocs, which is right now the default folder for your new websites, but we're not going to be using this one. And if we scroll all the way down, we have the XAMPP control panel. So what we're going to do, I'm going to right click on the XAMPP control, and we are going to pin it to the taskbar. So it comes down here. So reduce this. I'm going to right click again on the XAMPP icon and right click again on the XAMPP control. Select Properties. And in the advanced, we're going to check Run as Administrator. So by doing this, we're going to avoid a lot of problems down the line. So every time you open XAMPP, it's going to run as an administrator. So click OK and click OK here. If you right click and you right click again, you'll see that you have the option of Run as Administrator, but this one is manual. So every time you wish to open the control panel, you would have to right click, Run Admin. This way you won't have to. So just click on it. It will open the actual control panel, and now you are administrator of this XAMPP control panel. So let's start by just starting the two services, or the two modules that we need. We need the Apache and the MySQL. We will not be using the FileZilla, Mercury, or Tomcat for now, just these two. And as you can see, they all have these buttons with it that go with every module. So just to see if at least our installation worked, we're going to click on Admin beside the Apache, and it's going to show us a nice little success page. So the XAMPP, Apache, MariaDB, PHP, Perl, this is, localhost dashboard. Dashboard is within the folder that I told you was the root. So if we scroll back up in our C XAMPP, we have an htdocs. In our htdocs, we have a dashboard. And in our dashboard, we have an index page, which is right here, which is exactly this page here. So if I do index.html, and as you can see, this is the actual page that we see, the same one that we saw. Index is the main page for any website. So either index.php, .html, HTML, and all other different languages, the default file is usually index. Not always. Some older languages could have default as the default page, or you can set up your web server to look for something else as your default page. But by default, sorry if I say default a lot, index.html is usually the first one it will look for, then it will look for HTML, and then for PHP or any other language that we are using, for our case, PHP. So let's close this, and we can even close everything. All right, so we'll stop the Apache and the MySQL. We have a few configurations that we want to do. The first one is to change the actual default root folder for our websites. I will explain to you why I do this. Basically, every few months, or sometimes once a year, once every 2 years even, we want to upgrade our version of PHP or our version of XAMPP. So by default, we install it in XAMPP folder here. So if we were to remove this folder to install the new version, or maybe you'll see another YouTube tutorial that will show you how to install another type of software, and you say, well, I don't need XAMPP anymore, I'm going to install it, then you would lose this folder as well. So the htdocs folder, which contains all your websites. You don't want to do that. You're going to have a year, 2 years worth of work in there. So what I do is I create in some other directory a folder called www. You can name it whatever you want. For this case, we're going to call it www. And we're going to tell our web server that this folder here, even though it's empty for now, is going to be our default root folder for our future websites. So let's minimize this. All right. So on the line of the Apache, we have the config button here. Click on it, and you see we have a few selections. We're going to start with the first one, which is the httpd.conf file. And just click on it. It will open in Notepad. And you can go ahead and maximize this. And we're going to scroll down about halfway our page. And we will see here the 2 lines. So the DocumentRoot and the directory. And this is the directory of which you will serve your documents, so your websites. And we're not going to use the default one, so the /htdocs, which is the one I showed you. We're going to use the www one. And the same thing for the directory is www. And that's all the modifications we need to do in this file here. So now we go File, Save, and close this. All right. The next modifications that I do, and I always do this when I install XAMPP, and bear in mind that this is a one-off, so you won't have to do this every time you create a website or anything like that. You just do this when we install XAMPP. So we go to config and we go to the php.ini. So we're going to change a few limits that could help you and save you a lot of trouble down the road. So again, let's maximize this. If you go to the edit, you will have a find option, or if you do Control F, you will have the same thing. And we're going to look for, you don't have to write it all. It's just like a find what. So you can start with just a few characters. So the max exec, and make sure that direction is down because it's actually looking downwards. and click Find Next. And here we have the max execution time, which is 120 seconds, basically 2 minutes. And 2 minutes for 90% of what you're going to be using it for is plenty. 2 minutes to open a web page is a very long time. But with PHP, we can also write scripts, and scripts are little applications that could take potentially a lot more time. So rule of thumb, I put like 10 minutes, so 600 seconds. That should be enough for now. Next thing that we're going to look for is the memory limit. Don't actually have to find it because we just have to scroll down a little bit and it's right here. So it's just a few more lines down. Basically, it's half a gig, so 512 megs. And again, rule of thumb, I'm going to put 1024, which is 1 gig of memory. Again, if you're trying to load a very large page or a lot of information from a database, it could potentially take a lot of memory of your computer. And usually a gig, you know, most computers now have 8 or 16 gigs, so 1 gig is not that much. The next find is the post max size. So we can just write post max and do find. And this one is 40 meg. Usually I put it at 200. And this is because sometimes some databases can be fairly big. And this post max size and the next one is affected or affects the file size that you can upload in your database. So we have the post max size, and the last one is the upload max size. So upload max and do find next. Same thing, it's at 40 megs. So we will put 200 megs. So here, and now we can just save the file. Close this. So we have one more modification, which is more of a security modification. So we're going to start our Apache, and we're going to start our MySQL, and we will click here on the admin beside the MySQL. This is the default button to open the PHP MyAdmin, which is a console to visually create and edit your databases. So click admin, and it will open in a web browser the localhost PHP MyAdmin. So in here, we already have a few databases. These are the default ones that are created for MySQL, so we don't touch these. The only modifications that we're going to do here is that by default, MySQL and PHP MyAdmin do not use a password when you install it. So that's exactly what we're going to do. Don't need to be a very powerful or very huge password, but it's really good practice to add a password. So up here we have the user accounts, and you'll see there's 5 rows already. We only need 1. So we need, well, actually we're only going to use 1. The other ones we won't touch. We're going to use the root localhost one. So localhost is our PC, and root is the default username used for the MySQL database, so to access like as a username and password. So we're going to edit the privileges, and up here we're going to change the password. And just like I said, it doesn't need to be a very strong password, so let's just use password 123. So password 123, and the same thing for the retype. So password 123, and make sure that both are the same. So click go, and this we don't need, and no, we don't want to save this password. Now you're going to see an error once we click on this database, and that's because the PHP MyAdmin doesn't use a username and password to open, and now we just set a password for our database. So now it's saying, hey, you know, access denied for root localhost because you're using no password. No problem. So minimize this, and in config here, we're going to open the PHP MyAdmin, so the config.inc.php file. Just click on it. Don't need to maximize it because it's right here. As you can see, our config for root, So root, don't forget, is our username, our default user for the database. Doesn't use a password. So right here, we're going to use plain letters, so password 1, 2, 3. And don't forget to keep the single quotes. They're very important as they are only taking whatever's inside for a value. So click save, close this, and now we can go back to our browser and just hit refresh. So F5 or refresh. As you can see, everything is working normally. So we can go home, we can see our different databases. We won't be getting into depth of this database. We're going to see that in the future, but at least now we know that it's configured properly. And don't forget to remember, don't forget to remember. And don't forget to write down your password, as you will be needing it in the future. But as you maybe remember, we have it here as well. So if ever we open our config.inc.php, we know which password we need for accessing our database. So close this. And just for fun, we're going to click on the admin for the Apache. And now, as you can see, there's no files. So because remember, we changed the default root of our websites, which is this one here, the c:/www, which is an empty folder. So if I move it here, this is actually just an index of. So basically what it's doing is trying to list whatever's inside here. By default, the PHP or the web server is trying to find a file name index, but if there was a folder in here, it would show it as well, and it would be like a directory for a new website. So for now, what we'll do is just create a simple PHP page, HTML page. So with a text document, we can select everything, including the TXT, and we'll create a index.html file. And yes, I want to change the extension. And now it becomes a Chrome, because my Chrome is my default, but it becomes a web page. And we're going to edit that. So open with the notepad, which I do not have here. So you choose another app. And you're just going to scroll down, more apps, and use Notepad. Uncheck if ever it is. Always use this app to open HTML files, because we're going to install in the next tutorial how to install the editors for these files. So for now, we're just going to use Notepad. Okay, and you can see it's blank. So as a rule of thumb for all programmers, the first program that we always write is hello world. So let's do this. Hello world. And for sure, the exclamation mark. And we're going to save this. That's it. So now we have an index page with just text. There's no HTML or nothing. It's just text. But see what happens when we refresh our page. Now we have hello world. And so this shows that localhost is pointing to our c:/www. But if I do /index.html, we have the exact same page. And just to show you that I'm telling the truth, let's open this. And I will show you first HTML tag. It's h1, which is a large title tag, and for every HTML tag there's always a closing tag. So this here between the smaller than and greater than, we have an h1, can go down to h6. So smaller, the bigger the number, the smaller the size. And here we always have a closing, and how you know it's a closing, it's the front slash. So if we save this and we refresh our page, now our hello world is a lot bigger. So this concludes this tutorial here on how to install it. I will show you one last thing though. Sorry about that. Is how to actually close the XAMPP application. If you just click on the X, the only thing that does, it sends it to the taskbar on the bottom. It doesn't actually close it. So if I was to repress this, it would actually open a second version of the XAMPP control. So if you go down to your taskbar, down to the right beside the time, you'll see that little logo, the little icon for XAMPP control. So I'm going to reopen this, and you see it's still running, Apache, MySQL. So now what we're going to do to close it, here's going to stop the Apache, stop the MySQL, and actually click on quit. Now it's closed. So now we have nothing running. Now we can close our computer, no problem. If I try to refresh this page here, I will get an error. Yes, so this page cannot be reached because there's no web server running. So we just close XAMPP. XAMPP interprets the PHP, the HTML, everything like that, and displays the page on the in the browser. So now, as you can see, it's not working. So if I want to restart it, I just click on my XAMPP that I put here, and don't forget it's going to run as administrator. And this is automatically going to start once I press start and start here. Now, if I refresh this page, everything works again. So basically, that is it for XAMPP. So in the next tutorial, I will be showing you how to install the Visual Studio Code to be able to edit your pages. So this is basically a very nice editor for coding. So we have our hello world, and as you can see, it's color coded. And if we make a mistake in it or something like that, it will tell us. So this is going to be for the next tutorial. So thank you very much for watching this video, and I hope that you enjoyed it. And I'm going to put in the comments all the links that you need and all the settings that you need to change. So how to change the folder for the root of your websites, the limits, put a password for your PHPMyAdmin, and how to download the actual application. So thank you very much. My name is Bobby. I'm the caring programmer from websitesindla.com. Thank you.